Record on cloud. Never done that before. All right, guys, welcome. Glad you guys are with us for our webinar on anxiety and depression. With us is Kellee McCoy. I'm going to let him have the microphone here in a second, just to tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does and what he specializes in. But for those that don't know me, I am Dan. I'm the pastor of Central Hope Church in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I just know one of the things that we as a church are dealing with across the board is an amount of anxiety, not so much depression, but certainly the two can coincide together. I think I know that, Kellee. I don't want to speak too much into a field that I'm not very experienced in, but at least a little bit. But anyway, Kellee, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you work, those sorts of things.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's so good to see all of you. I'm Kellee McCoy. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I own Argenta Counseling in downtown North Little Rock. We have 12 therapists and 2 interns that we have over 600 sessions per month going on in that building, right beside Mug's Coffee. We also spend a lot of money on coffee and have some sort of caffeine addiction, I'm sure.
I'm sure there's therapy for that too.
Yeah, we don't provide that. We're
You're the addicts, right?
Yeah.
Well, Kellee, thank you for coming on and just giving us your time and walking us through this. This is a crazy time. That's just the reality of what not one of us has ever experiencing anything like this. Will you just, from like a counselor's perspective, just speak to this? Just give me your thoughts on this. Give us your thoughts as we deal with this.
Yeah, this is surreal. It's now our new normal, kind of, but it's still surreal. We wake up every day and we're like, really? Is this really still happening? And it's just hard. It's really difficult. Some people are handling it better than others. I had a good little first run there, but then I hit a wall about 2 weeks in. And I've kind of noticed people hitting walls at different points in this. And so we're providing 100% telehealth as therapists, and we're helping people in this moment kind of deal with the things that we've always dealt with our clients, but we're helping them get over this wall, or at least to accept the wall is there, if that makes sense, because this is just hard. Some of the reactions to this situation with COVID-19, social distancing, and just the shutdown of economy and furloughing of jobs and shutting down of schools, all that, the reactions are mental health symptoms. The common reactions of the masses are mental health symptoms. And so we all feel a little like we should be all diagnosed with something, even if we're not diagnosed with something. In fact, I was going to ask in the chat if you wanted to type in what are some of the symptoms that you guys have noticed due to this situation, some of the symptoms or reactions. I'm going to look at the chat here.
Yeah, we want to make this as much interactive as we can. There'll be times when Kelly's talking. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I feel like I'm just facilitating this conversation. So any way that I can facilitate this, I'm going to do that. But things are coming in. Kellee, can you see those?
Anxiety, apathy, isolation, anxiety and fear, random panics in the middle of the night. Absolutely, yeah. I got up one night convinced that I actually had COVID-19, and I might have, I don't know. But lack of motivation. I think we can all relate to all these. Some of the other symptoms. I wrote down fear, concern over uncertainty, boredom, panic, ambivalence, cravings for drugs, alcohol, pornography, ways to cope, things that we either shouldn't do or shouldn't do a lot of. We crave to do a lot of it.
Why is that, Kellee? Why is that? Why are would those be things that come up?
Yeah, well, and honestly, just to have some self-compassion, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want some coping in this? Why wouldn't we want some ease of some of these symptoms? So the idea is that we develop, we empower ourselves to move from some of these coping things that we kind of don't want, that aren't so healthy for us, and we move toward coping things, the coping skills and mechanisms that are good for us. And so for some, limiting to a glass or two of wine a night is perfectly fine. That's the progression to move. For some, they can't have one sip because of their situation. So it's kind of personalized to each person as to what coping skills are healthy. Some of my people in recovery, their cravings are very real right now. So we're helping build them up with support groups, which are all telehealth, and making sure they're touching base with their sponsors and all of that. But for those that are in that need to go tiptoe toward more moderation, then that's fine for you, and you just check in with your person or your people to kind of make sure that you're okay. I guess that answers that.
No, that's I was just curious as to.
I guess my answer is, yeah. Why wouldn't we want that?
I would assume human. It's sort of control. Like there's a sense like I need to control something.
Sure.
Or ease, or to deal with the panics in the nights, whatever it might be. The guilt that we might feel from apathy, from a lack of motivation to do our job. And I know that some of those things can make us feel like, oh, I'm doing a bad job now, and I'm just trying to control something. I was just curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, and I think control is a big issue. We crave certainty and control. We OCD and anxiety disorders are created because we use control as a coping mechanism, and we want to control everything. We want to control how many times we flip the light switch. It could go that far or whatever. But and so we want to accept that we don't have a lot of control in this situation. In fact, one of the things on the list of little ways that you can cope with the situation is find one thing you can control. Just one thing. Clean your desk. Clean your car. Go out and wash your car on a sunny day. One thing. I can control that, and kind of have gratitude that you have control over one thing in your life. Yeah.
I would think that this is be a big season. And I think a lot of people are grieving, and I don't know if they know how to grieve. Most people don't know how to grieve. And I know that's something you've talked about with me about this stuff. Would you just talk a little about grief in this period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think grief is what the masses are experiencing right now. And so if somebody has a good typewriter, Dan, you may have a typewriter, keypad. I'm on an iPad without. I would have to actually put the screen. Can you punch in this definition of grief on the?
I'll type it into the message on the message box. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's a great definition of grief. Grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior.
Let me read that back. Grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or the change in a familiar pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
So that definitely fits into what we're all experiencing, because all of our lives have been radically changed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all grieving because our lives have stopped. The familiar patterns have stopped, and there's this natural grief. And so, if we lose a person in our life, I've grieved a lot over the last 5 years. I've lost both my parents and lost some other things in life. And so I got really comfortable with grief, and it's because we don't grieve every death. We don't grieve maybe we should, but we don't. some people die and it doesn't affect us that much, but it's those that the loss of that familiar relationship, pattern of behaviors in that relationship. We grieve that. We grieve going to have coffee with whoever, or having those conversations with whoever. So all these symptoms and reactions that we listed on the chat and that I spoke of, including symptoms of depression and anxiety, some of that is just grief.
All right, so this is me being totally ignorant on this. I've heard of the stages of grief. It's something like that. Yeah, like I couldn't even tell you what that is.
I couldn't either.
Okay. I was gonna say, is there anything practical from that? I don't know about how we can deal with grief. I mean, I can personally speak to, this was probably 2 weeks ago, just being so overwhelmed by the changing of patterns, as your definition said, that I began like weeping just because of just the immensity of all that's going on. Yeah. I would think it's probably a good thing to weep, to express oneself physically, what one's experiencing internally. What's your thought on that, and any ways to deal with grief and that many of us are experiencing?
With grief, you want to do grief work. You want to go through grief, because you can get stuck in grief, and you can postpone grief. There was a point in my life associated with my divorce, and 15 years ago, that I postponed grief for 2 years. And it hit me 2 years after, and it hit me hard, as if it were that day. So there, and I've seen children do this. I've seen adults do this, particularly men who postpone grief about 4 or 5 years. A lot of times it ends up it looks like bipolar. They get aggressive. They get mood swings that are violent, and it's grief. It's postponed grief. And so at that point, I help this person process the grief. We walk through the grief, and we're crying like babies and riding the waves of grief. And then the symptoms kind of dissipate. Wow. These personality level symptoms dissipate. Stuck grief or postponed grief, it causes a lot of problems. So with that in mind, through this, we want to walk through it. So anybody doing grief work, I tell them to ride one wave at a time. So ride the wave of grief that comes to you whenever it comes. Go to the bathroom, go to another room, whatever. If you feel it well up, you're going to ride it in whatever way. If it's feeling anger, you're going to feel anger. If it's crying, you're going to cry. You're going to allow it. You're going to allow it and honor it. Ride it one wave at a time, and you'll feel it come down. And that's your one wave. That you've done your work. You get up and you go do something else. Because you can also get stuck riding a bunch of waves, and that's not helpful because
Yeah, I'm wondering, what are the symptoms? Like, personally, I know the symptoms of maybe not grief, but I know with trauma work, as I've dealt with my own personal trauma and the effect that it has on my biological, physical being. Does grief have a similar reaction to our bodies as like a trauma would? Can it?
Yeah, it can. There can be some complexity to grief or complexity to trauma when things are added, when things are piled on each other. And so someone giving CPR to a loved one and it doesn't work, that's pretty traumatic. So you have a trauma that then is stored in your body, and then you have the grief of losing this person, and it's compounded with some negative cognitions that come on that it's your fault and all this. And it just piles on, and you get stuck. You get stuck in this negative feedback loop of grief and trauma and just icky stuff. But from what I noticed, everybody handles grief differently. Some people will not grieve a parent dying, but a year later their dog will die, and it'll absolutely devastate them. And of course, there's a direct line. They're grieving. Right. But I don't know. It's grief is a human mechanism, and thank God for it, because it allows us to have the will to move on after devastating losses. But the only way to do it is to go through it. We got to walk through it, and you don't have to do it alone.
It's good. You want to say anything else on grief? Oh, is there anything else that you have off the top of your head?
No, I think
We actually have one. How do you do work through grief? That's a question that came from somebody. How do you do work through grief? Like, what are some examples of that?
I think that's also personalized to the person. With children, I usually have them do a creative project, and sometimes I have adults do creative projects too. To create a memory box, to create a painting, a picture, to gather items and display them. And I think a funeral is a way to create a memory box. It's this thing that happens, and there's creative elements to it, and a lot of times the family members are the producers of it. With both my parents, I produced the slideshow for their funerals, and it was very meaningful for me to pick out the songs, and that was my memory box. That was a creative process for me to process through and work through the grief. But a part of it is not avoiding it, talking about it. Sometimes a grief wave will come 15 years after an event, and you just get stuck in it somehow, and you got to go to a professional or to a friend or to someone and just talk it out, just get it out, just sometimes
it's in its simple answer, it sounds like, but for some reason we don't go there. There might be some shame attached to like, being a hot mess or whatever it might be, like, but it sounds like
grief is death. Grief is loss. I grieved before I lost my parents. I grieved, when my two boys moved out of state, 2 states away, and it was the literal hole. It's like somebody just cut a hole and took it out, and I'm just like, God, it's gone. It was death, and that's why I avoided that crap for 2 years.
Good.
Yeah. Trauma work, trauma and grief are different. They can be intertwined, but trauma work, there's a little saying that goes, trauma is hell. Trauma work is a hot ladder to get out of hell. So, when I do trauma work with clients, it's going to hurt. Nobody wants to get on that ladder. It stings, and it's hard. And it takes just a little bit to get some fresh air and to get some relief. I've got some specializations that speed up that process, and I'm confident in them.
Tell us about those, because I think those are really helpful.
Yeah, I do EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is basically, it emulates REM sleep patterns, where it's so hard to explain. It sounds really, it kind of sounds like witchcraft, and it kind of is, but it's not with no.
There's no magic potion.
It's white magic, if anything. I'm kidding. But no, it allows you to process at a deeper level by either moving the person's eyes back and forth to emulate REM, the sleep pattern. It's almost like cranking an old tractor. You crank the engine and then it starts. You're almost cranking the engine of how your mind gets into REM sleep and processing at a deep level. And so researchers showed that when they did that while discussing a traumatic event, the person scored lower in distress after going through that. And they didn't know why at first. It was kind of a fluke. And then they did a lot of research. And so now I use little paddles where they vibrate in each hand. So it's like your phone vibrating. It vibrates in each hand, and it kind of stimulates each hemisphere, and it gets that engine going. And so when we process, someone getting molested or raped or an accident in a car or, getting bullied, those kinds of things, all those traumatic things, that's how we climb the hot ladder out, and it speeds it up.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Good. Let's talk a little bit about anxiety, because I think a lot of people are dealing with anxiety. Certainly grief is a part of it, and I think that's probably one of these underlying things. But let's talk about anxiety now, something that a lot of us are familiar with. But just in a general sense, what are some characteristics of anxiety? I think you've already talked about it a little bit, but I just want to just certainly get at this, because when people say I have anxiety, I mean, what are they saying?
So, well, let me say first, before we jump into anxiety and maybe even depression, let me say that, those of us that do struggle with anxiety or depression, this situation's only aggravating it, right?
Yeah.
This situation is amplifying it, aggravating it, possibly taking away some of the good coping mechanisms that people have in their life to socialize or to go hike or go to Target. Target's a great place to go. It really is. I don't know. I know it's like a joke, but it really works. And you can't do it. I mean, you can, but nobody wants to go to Target right now. I don't know. Maybe I'll do, but I don't. I went into Target and I coughed right when this first started. I coughed and I literally yelled out, "I'm sorry, everyone." That was early March. I haven't been back since.
You know what? I think when I have to cough in a public space, I'm like, I try to do it as quiet as possible.
Which is worse. You sound like you're really ill when you're trying. Yeah. So I guess just to say that, while a lot of this is grief, people that those of us that do have anxiety and depression, those are real. It's not just the grief part of this. This is aggravating that and possibly keeping us from coping well with it. So to your question, anxiety. So let's get real simplistic on anxiety and depression. And this is, researchers and professionals would, not agree with this 100%. But if you look at anxiety is worrying about the future. Depression is worrying about the past. And there's the idea is that we want to live in today. We want to be here and now in today. And that's where we can find peace, calm, and hope that we can endure tomorrow, because we don't have to handle tomorrow right now. Yesterday's gone. Yesterday doesn't exist. Only thoughts and relics from yesterday exist. Tomorrow doesn't exist. All we have is today. And so as we think about that, anxiety is this sense of impending something bad. Anxiety is a worry, an impending doom. It's and somehow that makes an elephant sit on your chest all of a sudden. It's a feedback loop in your head, and so you start thinking about this and worrying, and then it just kind of snowballs, and all of a sudden your body responds, your nervous system and your arousal level gets high, and you get into fight or flight. And all of a sudden, chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline are flowing through your body, because that part of your brain thinks that a tiger is after you. And it doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference between a tiger being a tiger after you or somebody close to you just hurt your feelings. So yeah, anxiety is kind of an impending sense of doom or danger or harm, or something bad is going to happen. The other shoe is going to drop. This nervous, worry, restless, distress, tightness, tense, increased heart rate, and the treatment for it is medication and counseling. The coping skills for it, there are home remedies kind of for anxiety. You don't have to necessarily get on meds. You've got to somehow get to today and not worry about yesterday or tomorrow. You've got to, and so you do that by using coping skills like getting active. That's going to produce the right chemicals in your body. Breathing. If you're anxious, you're not breathing. I promise. If you're anxious, your breathing is shallow, and you are not breathing well. And so you make yourself do breathing exercises. You do systematic relaxation. So where progressive relaxation, where you go through this thing and of go head to toe and relax every part of your body.
Is that a body scan? Is that it's called a body scan? I've heard that called a body.
No, body scan's a little different. Body scan is kind of this idea that you pretend a green line scanner is going from head to toe, and you're going to try to pick up some somatic senses. And so there's this, we got the 5 senses, but there's kind of a 6th sense in that there's stuff that happens in your body that you want to get highly in tune with.
Okay. I got you.
Like tightness in your chest. I've got a grief spot in my stomach. It's right there. And it's a spot that big and it burns. And so when I feel that, I know that I'm grieving my dad, most probably. That's probably who I'm. And so if I'll go to the body, I'll do the scan, like what's going on with my body. Oh, it's that thing. Okay, I'm grieving something. And then I honor that grief. Yeah. I sit in it, I allow it, I ride a wave, and then I'm able to move forward.
And so a progressive relaxation, someone asked if it would be cool to do a progressive relaxation. I don't know if we have time for that right now. I mean, I don't know how long they take. I mean, you tell me, but what would be an example?
I can tell you really quick.
Yeah, please do.
So when I'm teaching little kids little kid clients, I'll call it spaghetti arms. And so with adults, I start with the feet, with the toes. So we start and then we work our way up, because then we get to the nose and the head. But with kids, I start with the arms because they love to make muscles. And so spaghetti arms. So what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to tighten up, and I add a breath in. This is not necessarily in the protocol, but you breathe in. When you breathe in, you're tensing. When you breathe out, you're turning into noodle arms, spaghetti arms. And so you would go, and then you would start with your toes. So you're going to curl your toes up, and then get your feet, and then your calves, and then your legs, and then your core, arms, all the way up to it, and scrunch up your face. And I do this at night sometimes, and I'm out. It's a great relaxation thing for night.
That's good.
So it's a tense and a relax.
And that's a good way of dealing with just like an anxiety that we're feeling, or a good way to physically deal with. That's good. That is good.
Yeah. Breathing and progressive relaxation and mindfulness. Those are kind of the perfect trifecta of coping skills for anxiety and depression. It helps for both, but particularly for anxiety. And so breathing, you want to use 4-7-8 is a great method. And so I tell kids, you're smelling the flowers, you're blowing out the birthday candles. So you're in through the nose, out through the mouth, and you're doing belly breaths. You're not doing chest breaths. You're doing belly breaths. You're blowing it out. And so with 4-7-8, you're going to do 4 counts in, hold for 7, out for 8. And so we can do it. We can all try it right now if you want to. So we're in floor. We're going to go.
Let's all relax. Right?
So we're going to go in floor. Ready. Hold. Out. Do that 3 times. Do it 3 times a day. That's my prescription. I like 3. Mm-hmm. You do that 3 times in a row. Do it 3 times a day, and you're gonna train your body that it's good to breathe, and you're gonna tell that limbic system to stop thinking a lion's after you. Because if you're breathing like that, a lion's definitely not after you. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
You know. Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said. You called it the trifecta. The third one, and you haven't really talked about it, is mindfulness. When you said that, what do you mean by that? And give us some examples of what mindfulness is.
Mindfulness is a deep well. It's a deep subject. It is, this is a church group. Jesus was really good at mindfulness. He got away. He got present. Here and now, present. And so mindfulness is kind of getting to a point where you are in the now, where yesterday doesn't exist, tomorrow doesn't exist. All that you're focusing on is your breath. So one way to get into mindfulness is to go through the 5 senses. if you have some tea around or something, you can do the fifth sense. But and so take a minute and just listen. And you start listening to the layers of the birds, wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
You start just kind of getting really curious about what you hear. And then sight. Then smell. If you're outside, you can smell some grass or whatever. And feels the touch is a big one for me. And so just touch alone can get me into a state of here and now.
Wow.
So you're going to feel the clothes on your back, feel your jeans or your pants, pick up a blade of grass or whatever. And you're breathing as you're doing this. You're feeling, you're listening, you're seeing, you're smelling, and even have a morning cup of coffee and just get curious about the taste of the coffee or whatever. And then you're here and now. You're there. Yesterday doesn't exist. Tomorrow doesn't exist. All it is right here.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really helpful, because going back to your definition or why we have anxiety, we're worried, but you're trying to bring us back to the present. And those are great exercises for us to be mindful of the present. And I think that's a really good way for us to be, not only because I think cognitively know we're physically there, but oftentimes our minds go to the future, and it's almost we're detached from our body, or we just go through the motions. And what you're saying is, no, come back today.
Yeah, come back.
And and even going back to a previous a healthy coping mechanism: clean your desk, wash your car, organize a bookshelf, whatever it might be, something that's attainable to help you deal with some of the anxiety that you're dealing with.
Yeah. Control is a big thing. When you feel out of control, the negative feedback loop will start. The snowball will start, because it's true. That's the horrifying thing is that we don't have control, and that's terrifying. Let
me get your comments. This is a comment from the section, and let me just read it, and I'd just love to get your thoughts. It seems that the part of the challenge of these times is the complexity, and the interaction of a variety of negative emotions on top of the regular demands of our lives. Mm-hmm. And then they followed it up with, and you can come wash my car if you need a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. And so this is where you have cognitive dissonance. So that's a big word in our industry. That cognitive dissonance means that you're holding two things that are opposing each other. And so a lot of times the way to settle the cognitive dissonance between these two things is to allow both of them to be in your hands at one time. And so it's radical acceptance that this, excuse my language, sucks.
That's fine.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
This sucks, but I gotta teach my kid second grade spelling or whatever. This sucks, but I gotta make dinner. Yeah, that's over in this hand too, actually. Yeah, this sucks, but my spouse needs me not to be a depressed ball of mess and muck. I need to be there for my kids. I need to be. This sucks, but I need. And so when you're holding two things that you've got that dissonance in between, you don't know what to do with it, because there's no answer. A lot of times there's no answer but yes. Yep.
Ooh, that's tough. That is tough. Yeah. And shoot, you have two hands. Oftentimes you're holding something on your head. And well, it's like that. It's like the Tetris screen. I talk about that as an example of anxiety in overdrive, where I don't know if you play Tetris, but you're doing fine. You're getting them all lined up. You're getting them all lined. They start to get a little bit faster. Oh no, you get another one, but then it gets up at the top, and it just keeps piling up, and the game is over, and they're still falling. You can still see them falling. And that's life sometimes. It's like, how can I do this? This is not possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about depression? I think, how does someone know if they have depression? I think some people throw that around probably a little too loosey-goosey. But how do you know you have it? And then another question is, when should you seek help, professional help with depression? I'd love your thoughts and perspective on depression. You've mentioned it, but go ahead and speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. So depression is going to have intense sadness, tearfulness, hope, a sense of hopelessness, emptiness. A lot of times, thoughts of not wanting to exist anymore. That's very common. Sometimes that evolves into suicidal ideation. A lot of times it's just, I don't necessarily want to do anything harmful to myself. I no longer want to exist. And that's a pretty good sign that you're depressed if it's to that point. It's the intensity and how long it lasts. And the DSM-5 has a certain number of weeks or days or what, I don't know. I don't even know what it is. I should know, but typically it's just this prolonged, intense sadness, hopelessness, and then it's accompanied by negative cognitions, negative beliefs, typically about yourself. So when somebody comes in my office and is depressed, I'm on the hunt. I'm the investigator. I'm hunting for that negative cognition. What is it? What is the core negative cognition? Because there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of negative hopelessness, all this stuff, but we can funnel it down to one thing. And what is it? Is it I'm not good enough? I'm a failure? Is it I'm not lovable? I'm not worthy of love? Is it that I'm not redeemable? Some core negative cognition was planted. That seed was planted by something, an event, or someone, or just by how you interpret the events of your life. It was planted, and that grows into depression. And sometimes it grows like a weed, and then the sun comes out, and you can cut it back, and it grows back in later in the fall or whatever. So, and so what we do with depression is, of course, medication helps. That's going to help serotonin stay in your system longer, so that you feel like serotonin is life, cortisol is death, and so you want serotonin, not cortisol. So these depression meds, all they do is help serotonin remain in your system longer, so that it can be absorbed, so that you can feel like you're alive. And so, yeah, depression is death, and it's just a dark cloud, and it comes over. And I've experienced. I deal with depression. That's my thing, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah.
But
is there a time when someone, like, your professional recommendation, someone should seek out help? Like, is there like a red flag? Like, this is when the red flag, I know you've already spoke to those, but like, is it suicidal ideation? At what point? I mean, if someone thinks, seriously, if someone thinks they're depressed, they should get it checked out. I don't know.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
If you hear a ding in your car, go get it checked out. It may be nothing. You may have spent $100 for no reason. Okay. Or it may be something. I would say absolutely get it checked out. If you've got some negative cognitions in there that are floating around that you just can't shake, that are causing some sadness, hopelessness, or causing your mood to drop to the point where there's a disruption of normal activity, the things that you like to do, you're finding yourself not doing, or people around you are noticing you're not doing it, then that absolutely go get it checked out. And counseling alone can help. Medication alone can help. Counseling plus medication is a 1-2 punch. It's the way to go. Yeah. High efficacy rate. Some similar coping skills for anxiety. Getting active is a big coping skill for depression. For me, if I need nature, so a walk in the woods will typically lift my cloud. Also, just talking it out with a professional or not, just talking through my I'm a failure or whatever I've got going on.
Right.
And having somebody kind of look at me like, okay, maybe I'm not a failure 100%. Okay. You know, and then you start talking back to yourself and you can kind of climb out of that, or the clouds will part just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I know you have a list of top 10 things. Do you want to share? Can you share that with them? And then
sure. You know, if
is
you
it
want,
silly?
it's silly. No, it's not. There's this kind of philosophy that I have of shifting from a no to a yes. And we're getting a lot of no's right now in this situation. No, you can't do this. No, you can't. And yeah, we may open it up, but we're going to hang a no out there because it may come back. There's a lot of no's, right? And so we want to shift from a no position and wake up every morning and get to our yes. So one way to do that. So I've got little 10 things how to cope with our current situation. So number one is honor your feelings. And so this also kind of answers the question that was asked, you know, what happens when, you know, negative emotions get piled up upon our normal daily activity. We don't want to judge our emotions ever. Well, there's a couple of emotions that you kind of want to look at. Guilt is not a helpful long-term emotion. But you want to honor it. You don't want to stay there, but you want to honor it. You want to say, all right, so what's going on there? I feel angry. You want to honor the anger, or just at least say, oh, there you are, anger. Hi. And see if it's useful. Maybe it is useful. Maybe there's some injustice that you can speak to. Guilt, you know, if you feel guilty, guilt is a great short-term motivator. It helps you apologize. It helps you put the piece of candy back in the little candy store. You know, it helps you right your wrongs a little bit. But guilt is a terrible long-term motivator. So you want to honor it, but you also want to go quickly to your thoughts. And so this is number 2, test your thoughts. You don't want to honor every thought. You want to, and so Dan, you know, the title of this thing was don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything. You know what a belief is? A belief is a thought you believe. And some of those thoughts are true. We have some evidence. We have some faith and evidence and life experiences. So we're like, yeah, that's a belief we have. And I'm going to hang my hat on that thought and that belief. And so we want to test our thoughts, because some things we believe it's not helpful to believe. It's not true. It's not rational. And so we want to test it. Is it true? Is it rational? Is it helpful? And is it positive? So some things might be true. You might have really blown it. You might have failed. But are you a failure? We're going to test that.
Good.
Number 3, develop a self-care plan. So self-care is immensely important. This is how you just take care of yourself. It's very personalized. It could, you know, there is a self-soothing aspect to this, and there's going to your body. I would recommend going to your body, getting your body into calm states. So this is exercise, yoga, massage, stretching, walks, getting outside, eating well, sleep. Sleep is the best self-care thing you can do. You can eliminate personality disorder level symptoms by getting sleep.
Wow. Wow. So no more binging on Netflix.
Yeah. So the psychiatrists that I refer to all go to sleep. Yeah, they don't go to sleep. They go to the sleep. And so they're going to prescribe, they may prescribe a mood stabilizer or a depression med, but they're going to ask about the sleep. And if the person's not sleeping, they're going to give them something to help them sleep.
Yeah.
So self-care plans, number 3. Number 4, assemble a coping skills toolkit. And so this is breathing, relaxation, mindfulness. This is talking back to yourself, phoning a friend, whatever whatever works for you. Walking outside, going for a bike ride, coping skills toolkit. What are your go-tos when you start feeling a certain way? When you start having some anxiety, depression, have a couple of go-tos that work every time. 5, find a way to daily connect with friends. So we have, if social need is a need that will put us into fight or flight. Because if we're alone, if we're outside of a herd, we're going to get picked off, right? So we need connection. We need social connection, and we need to belong. If we don't belong, a tiger gets us. We've got to be a part of the herd. And so connect with your herd every day. Find creative ways to, during this time, because we can't go, see everybody that we want to see, but you can get creative and connect in some way every day. Number 6 was get control over one thing in your life. Find the smallest thing you can have control over and do it. Cleaning my glasses every morning. I do that. That's just one thing I can control. And my glasses look great, right now, take a shower every morning. Dress in real clothes, or something,
I remember early on that there was discussion about whether or not you should do that. But I think that there's a lot of credibility to showering, getting dressed.
Yeah.
Because it speaks to that control thing where you're controlling something. And yeah, that's good.
Or take a weekend and not. Take a weekend and just like I'm not controlling nothing. I'm just going to sit here and binge watch. Okay, but then Monday morning get back on the rails. 7 is daily add the good things of life to. So daily add gratitude, humor, curiosity, novelty. Novelty is huge right now. We've lost novelty. We're watching the same stupid things on Netflix and the same things every day. So find, we've got a skip bow game in there. We need to play that, Meredith. We need to play skip bow. I've never played that. I don't want to, but that's novel. It's new. It's going to be fun if the kids, that'd be kind of novel. Be silly. And I'm preaching to myself here, really.
Hey, come on.
Add that humor and novelty and fun and curiosity and gratitude every day. Try to add those good. That's the sweetness of life, and we don't have to do without that right now. We can get really creative and add those things. That's number 7. Number 8, express yourself. So this could be creatively express yourself, or do the fruits of the Spirit. Express yourself in kindness and gentleness. Go from reactive and I'm a victim to this to I'm going to shoot some arrows out toward people and express myself and be a helper, to be kind. And that gives you a mission. That gives you a mission through this, where you're not passive in this. So number 9, curate your life. So become your own librarian or your own art curator. So this is limiting media to what you want to limit it to. Turn it off. Go to slow news. You're going to find it out eventually. You can always replay it. Something big happens. Somebody's probably going to tell you. We don't have to watch every second of this. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So curate your life to add beautiful things on your walls of your life. Add artful things. Add the media that you want. Add the news that you want. Read, listen, and watch things. Curate it. Get really fine art about it, where you're really picky and snobby about what you allow into your life. And the last one is find a therapist if you need. That's it. That's my top 10.
Kellee, that's really helpful, and thank you. The whole point of this is just that there's hope, and you really kind of helped communicate, hey, there's a helpful road, and I really appreciate you. There is hope in the midst of what we're going through right now. At this time, I just kind of want to open it up to the crowd watching. questions that you guys have. I already have one question that perhaps you can answer, and it is, what do you do if someone isn't willing to seek help for depression? So what do you do if you know someone that is depressed? I mean, obviously there's a lack of control, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, if you know someone depressed, they don't want to do anything but die. They don't want to do anything but sit in darkness and die. You know, it's depression is death. Depression is a dark cloud. You're typically not motivated to do anything. So depressed people are difficult because they are resistant. They're irritable. They can get angry. They can blame it on you. On, you know, if you're around a depressed person, you might get some arrows thrown at you, shot at you.
Yeah.
So I guess if you have someone that you love and it's in your community or in your house or whatever that's depressed, open up some dialogue about some of these negative thoughts and feelings first. Maybe try to be gentle as you offer solutions for help, including a therapist or medication. You don't want to come out the gate saying, you need a shrink and you need some meds, you know?
Because that's going to go over real well.
Yeah. You want to be gentle. And it's hard to be gentle with somebody that's irritable and mean.
Yeah.
And that just wants to die. It's a difficult thing to deal with people with mental health issues.
I do know, as a mandatory reporter, when people start, at least I don't even know. I'm kind of speaking ignorantly here. At what point do you Baker Act somebody? And for those that don't know, Baker Act, when someone is threatening to kill themselves, you can actually call people in to help with that, right? When do we Baker Act? When can we legally?
Yeah. So as soon as suicidal ideation, particularly with a plan, is involved, you no longer worry about the feelings of that depressed person. You get them safe. It's the next direct line to safety.
And that's do you call 911? What do you recommend people?
911 is a great path, and that's extreme.
Sure. Yeah. I realize.
As in our office, if there's a parent there, if there's someone there, we can release them to them with a plan, and then we will follow up with them.
Yeah.
And then we will recommend that they go straight into like a Bridgeway or go to the ER. The ER is a great entry point to get the next help. They're going to hold you for a certain amount of time, and watch you. And then they're going to take you by ambulance to a Rivendell or Bridgeway or Pinnacle Point or whatever. Okay. Or you can go straight to those facilities. But yeah, you want to intervene. As soon as someone has a plan and they're talking death, intervene. You're there. You're it. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're it. and it's and some people will cry wolf a lot, and that's frustrating and it makes you angry. People that they'll use it as particularly boyfriends to girlfriends, or they'll, hey, if you leave me, I'm gonna slit my wrist, and those kinds of things. And that's tough. So it can be a manipulative tool of abuse, emotional abuse, which is really hard to manage. Because that keeps people hostage, holds people hostage a lot of times. And so sometimes in those settings, you have to leave and then call for the help. You have to leave and then call 911.
That's good. One more question that came through. What's the best way to cope? And maybe you answered this already, but I'll let you answer it. What's the best way to cope with the stress of not knowing when COVID-19 will end and when we'll be able to get back to quote unquote normal, whatever will be a new normal?
Yeah, that darn uncertainty. We want certainty so badly. And we just can't have it. Unfortunately, we can't have it.
A good lesson in life.
It is. And so how we cope with it is we move toward our yes. Uncertainty is a no. We move toward a yes with using our skills. And so we move to the one thing that we can't control, one thing we can be certain of. We get it down to today and here and now. And that doesn't solve tomorrow's problems. It doesn't solve, when we get to go back to work, but sometimes it's all we got, and radical acceptance. That's the ultimate goal is radical acceptance of uncertainty and once you radically accept it, it's like, okay, here we go.
You just adjust to that,
Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of times we got to hold the uncertainty with, I still got to go out there and go to work, even though I'm uncertain if I'm going to get, because I'm a essential, whatever,
That's good. Well, Kellee, thank you so much for taking the time. And for those of you guys that know, he is Argenta in North Little Rock, downtown North Little Rock. Kellee, what's the best way if someone wants to contact? What's the way for someone to talk to someone at your clinic, and what's the best way to do that?
My clinic, the best way is to go to the website argentacounseling.com, and I'll have profiles of all my therapists, and we take most of the insurances, and there's a number to call, or you can message us that way, or go to Psychology Today. They're an amazing therapist in the city, and Psychology Today, everybody, if you're a therapist in private practice, you have a Psychology Today profile. Mm-hmm. So it's the best database for therapists. So, it may not be at my practice that is the best fit. So go to Psychology Today, find somebody.
Yeah, good.
Finding a therapist is kind of like finding a good pair of shoes. Sometimes it's not a fit at first. Sometimes you got to wear them in. Sometimes you got to change shoes, So you are empowered in your therapeutic plan. You can fire your therapist, even if it's me. If there's somebody better, go, please.
That's good. That's really good. Well, Kellee, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And hope to see you on the other side of COVID-19.
Yeah. Thank you. So good to see you all. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yep. Y'all take care. Good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.